Bad land is the kind of property that hides its imperfections just well enough to convince you that it's still worth buying because you notice what you think is probably a minor flaw. But in the grand scheme, all good land has some problems and the property is really cute, right? You're getting a good deal, the seller's giving you a good deal, and no land is perfect. But when you buy that land, you realize that the problem that you overlooked is big, costly, and expensive, and even worse, it could have easily been avoided. Because what you have to understand about bad land is it's very, very simple because all bad land has six things in common. And before you waste your time researching about a property and its utilities, its zoning code, the table of permitted uses, you want to understand the physical property because if you have a defect on that physical property, you're going to find it in one of six different places. And the way that we make it easy for you to remember what those six places are is a system that we've created for spotting bad land that we call assess. Assess is an acronym and each of the letters stands for one word. And assess stands for access, soil, slope, environmental, street view, and satellite view. And in this video, we're going to break down each of the six letters of the assess framework, and we're going to show you real world examples of property that is not good, that you would lose money if you bought it, but that is hiding its defects incredibly well. And if you don't know what to look for, you're not going to find it and you're going to miss it. We're going to highlight examples of bad property across each of the six steps of the assess framework. And then once we spot the bad property, I'm going to give you an example at the very end of the video of what a good property looks like and how quickly you can spot good land and sort it out from all the bad land by using the assess framework. And to prove how quick and easy this is, I'm actually going to put myself on a timer. And in the live example at the very end, I'm going to see if I can show you how to spot good land in 60 seconds or less. What I want you to look at is this property here. It's a 10-acre piece of land in Williamsburg, Virginia. It's in James City County on Overlook Drive in a really nice subdivision. And this is a property we were trying to buy it about a year ago. And we thought we got a really good deal on it because we had it under contract at 160 grand. But every indication that we could see on the market was that this piece of land was worth about 300. And when you look at the nearby building lots that sold, you see a huge amount of comps, a number of comps of building lots that were much smaller that sold for 270,000 up to 375,000, some even higher. And in this particular subdivision where the land was located, 1 acre lots with homes and homes that were on smaller building lots than ours. Those homes were selling upwards of $750,000. And yet the lot that those homes were sitting on was much less than the property we were looking at because this 10-acre piece of land was completely one of a kind. It was a totally distinctive property. It's a 10-acre property that fronts out to a section of pond. So you have private frontage, hundreds of feet of pond frontage on this private waterway that would make for an idyllic home site. And you have a private entrance too, because you have a driveway that goes through a 50-foot wide right-of-way, through a cleared strip of land, past some of the neighboring homes, over the dam to the property that is on the other side, the home site, the perfect home site. And look, there's a little bit of site prep to get that driveway ready to go because, you'd have to put asphalt on it. The subdivision has some requirements to that effect, and you'd have to improve the driveway. But that piece of land is cleared. It's so flat and cleared and graded. It's so inviting. It's like a putting green or something like that. So the cost in the grand scheme of laying out some asphalt on that strip of land is not going to be that significant compared to the actual value of the finished construction and the value of that property with a home and a nice driveway to go with it. But there was a problem because when we were looking at that driveway closely as we were getting closer to closing, what we learned about that driveway is that it crossed over a dam that was controlling the flow of water from that creek to the east into that little pond, that private waterway to the west. But, the thing about that dam is that it wasn't exactly built to handle vehicular traffic. Traffic like, I don't know, for example, like your car, like the car that you would drive from the Walgreens or from the Wegmans across that dam into your forever home on that 10 acres with a nice private pond next to it. But because the dam was not engineered to bear the weight of vehicular traffic, the person that would ever build a home on that property would have to put all types of improvement into that dam. They'd have to hire an engineer to even figure out how to re-engineer the dam. And once they figure that out, they're going to realize that it's going to cost several $100,000, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dams aren't cheap, guys. This is not like some beaver colony with a bunch of twigs. This is like, this is an engineered dam that serves two functions. One, to control the flow of water into a pond for decades. And then the other function is to bear the vehicular traffic that would be required for a future home. Now you may be thinking, well, there's a subdivision here, there's covenants, and like the subdivision may have a thing or two to say about that driveway. And in fact, a lot of these subdivisions pay for shared amenities. I mean, the pond is being used by a number of those neighbors. So wouldn't the subdivision and the neighborhood have a vested interest in improving the dam and paying to do that? And the answer is no, because they don't really benefit from it. They don't really care about your driveway. They don't really care about your forever home. The dam is fine as it is. They're trying to look the other way and pretend not to notice the fact that the infrastructure that dam comprises is already crumbling. The dam is falling apart. This is the other thing. It's like mid failure. The dam is going to break either way. And if you're buying that property, the driveway is the least of your concerns, because the minute that dam breaks, the water floods and the property's unusable, and any driveway would have to have a canoe and a couple paddles and some kayaks and life jackets just to get across the water that would be flooding through that dam. And not only that, but this is an area of Virginia that is highly regulated. The zoning office in James City County is notorious. They don't like to see construction. They don't like to see capitalism that close to their neighborhoods when it comes to new real estate development. And so they're not going to make it that easy for you. At least that's what all the agents in the area told me. What do I know? But the thing is, guys, the cost of actually fixing that driveway and engineering the dam sufficient to actually have a driveway into that 10-acre home site, yeah, the cost of that dam would be greater than the land would realistically be worth. And so it would be difficult if you bought that land to actually sell it at any price, because the cost of engineering that dam would put you underwater, literally and figuratively. Because the A in assess stands for access. And access, when it comes to vacant land, comes in two phases. Number one is legal access. Legal access is, can you get to that property without illegally trespassing on your neighbor's land? Now, in this case, the answer is yes, because you have the private right of way that goes through the subdivision. No argument there. But see, the other part of access is what's called physical access. Physical access is, can I get to that property by car? Now, if you drove over the dam today, you may be able to get away with it. But what about the next 10, 20, 30 years? Probably not. And so when you ever have an issue where you have to improve a section of road, you have to cut in a driveway, you have to understand like all the engineering that goes with that. And this was a very anomalous issue. This is a very uncommon issue. I mean, we had probably done 100 land deals before we saw this. And even this, we learned a lot on this one. Access is the first section of assess, because if you can't get to the property, you can't really use it. And as a result, a property that has great access in the same location, same topography, same everything, if that property instead has bad access, I mean, you can lose 70 or 80% of the value of that piece of land. And so understand the access that you have. And if you're interested in looking at land and you want a free checklist of the assessed preliminary risk evaluation guide, the system that we're talking about in this video, I'm going to leave it in the description for the video here. So go ahead and check that out. Also, check this out. This is a property that's 5.97 acres. It's on Baywood Road. It's in Cumberland County. This is outside Fayetteville, North Carolina. When you look at this piece of land, what you can see is that it runs lengthwise, east to west, and that section of road on Baywood Road gives you several hundred feet of road frontage. In fact, just eyeballing it, I'd have to look, but probably 700 or 800 feet of road frontage there. And that will be sufficient to split that parcel into 3, 4, maybe 5 separate building lots. And even as a single home site, that land is really good. I mean, it could be easily worth $75,000 as a single home site, assuming that you can put a single septic system on that land. But to figure out if you can do that, I'm going to check out the land portal soil map here. And when you look on the land portal soil map, the majority of the soil here on this land is Johnston loam, subcategory 7W. It's categorized as swamp. Very poorly drained soil. In fact, when you expose the wetlands filter on this map, you see that it's also wetlands. Now, not all bad soil is wetlands, but when it comes to installing septic, all wetlands is bad soil because the high water table prevents the subsurface soil and the drain field from actually draining the wastewater through the natural soil conditions of the property. So the high water table is just a showstopper for septic. Now on this one, what's interesting is that the only usable dry portion of soil appears to be on the eastern strip of the property. If you look, you have what appears to be a more favorable soil series, Blaney loamy sand, and that's a strip of soil on the eastern section. Now, your issue there is that area of usable soil appears to have a driveway that your neighbor is illegally, unlawfully using to get to their house. So there's an encroachment from the neighboring homeowner to go through the only part of the property where you may have buildable soil. So that's not good. And by the way, if you're interested in more detailed mapping, real simple, easy mapping systems, we have an exclusive free trial offer for the viewers of our channel to check out the land portal on a free trial. So go ahead and I'm going to put a QR code and link in the description below for anybody that wants a free trial to check out this really powerful mapping software. And land like this should be worth 75,000 or so with a single septic system. It could be more on a minor subdivide because you may have 4 building lots. If you had good soil all the way through, you could have 4 building lots. Each of those building lots could sell for $30,000 or $35,000. But even with one, it's probably 75K. If you take the wetlands out of the property and you just put a septic system in there, I think you have 75,000. But instead, a property like this that's non-buildable, that has an encroachment issue, that has wetlands on it, that has a number of different issues, I mean, instead of being worth $75,000, it may sell for 12 to 15 grand to a neighbor, probably the one who is already using that land for their benefit. Because the first S in assess stands for soil. And when you are looking at land, especially in rural areas of the US, soil will impact up to 80% of the value of that land. I've seen it all the time. I've seen it myself up close and personal because when you're looking at soil for the standpoint of installing a subsurface septic system, you need 2 different characteristics. You need sufficient soil depth and sufficient soil drainage because you need to use the natural characteristics of the soil in order to install a subsurface drain field to actually filter that water, the wastewater from the home, because soil's magic, basically. Soil purifies water more efficiently and cheaply than anything else you could design in a lab. And so the natural engineering of soil is like almost perfect. It's incredible, but it just has to drain. And if you have the high water table, it won't drain. And you want to look at the prevailing soil maps. You want to look at the soil series on the land that you're buying, like we did with the land portal in this past example, because you can see what types of soil may exist on that property. And you can just look up the soil series on Google. You can look at the USDA maps, figure out how deep and how well drained the soil is. And then that'll give you a really good idea of whether it's worth pursuing. Now, the county soil maps might be wrong. So you always want to get a soil scientist out there before you close. A lot of people leave messages on the comment section of these videos about how soil doesn't matter. You can always put an engineered system, or there's these biodigester systems and things like that. And that may be so. Well, the second part may be true. The first part is not, because even if you have a mound system or an aerobic drip system, if you're using a subsurface drain field, you need the soil to perform at a certain standard, and that's regulated by the state. So even like in North Carolina here, you need at least 12 inches of usable soil for an aerobic drip system or a mound system, because you can't put lipstick on a pig when it comes to soil. You can bring sand and gravel and fill in, but that wastewater is still going to go down. It's going to go down into the ground. And so you have to have that drainage of the soil at some level. And there's some more advanced, sophisticated systems that end up being more expensive to install and maintain, that can work in cases where you can't use a subsurface, septic system. People talk about holding tanks, where you don't really have a drain field. You just pump the septic into a tank. The problem with it is, it's like you got to get it pumped like once every week. It's like $100. It's like 5-6 grand a year just to like running expenses. There's like issues with the maintenance of all these types of systems. And my point to you is not that there aren't ways to engineer around it. My point is that it imposes a cost on construction and development of a future home, and therefore it lowers the cost, it lowers the value of the land that you're talking about. Soil's probably the most like underappreciated thing that you'll find when it comes to vacant land. It's one of the most misunderstood drivers of land value in America. The education on it in general and some of the conventional wisdom is not that good. Sellers rarely have soil work done. When they're listing their property, they rarely will do the soil work, even though it's 80% of the potential value of the land that they're selling. Agents don't really understand soil that well, even though it's totally critical to actually getting these deals closed, getting these deals across the line, which is the only way that they get paid. And most buyers don't want to pull the septic permits. They don't want to pay for the soil maps, even though it's a huge point of leverage to negotiate lower price when they know how to navigate these discussions with the seller. So guys, like with soil, when it comes to soil, a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. And this is one of the areas that I think that we've really moved the ball in terms of education and the knowledge base that we've put forward on this topic. This is one of the big topics and motivating factors that led me to create the Land Purchase Navigator, which is a self-guided online education product. It's a 5-hour video course with immersive examples, graphics, downloadable materials, playbooks, all the systems that you need to learn to buy land like a pro with no prior experience required. We've got, as of the time of this recording, discounted pricing available. I'm sure it's not going to be this cheap forever, guys. Limited time only. It's on our website, so you can check it out on our website, acrewell.com, or on the link in the description below. The second S, the third letter in assess is slope. How about that? Now, this is a property that's 1.09 acres in Alabama, in a nice town called Rainbow City. That sounds like a beautiful place. Wow, Rainbow City, Alabama. And it looks really good on the surface because it's a 1 acre lot in a nice subdivision with pretty valuable homes. Paved roads, really nice views, stunning views. They're really promoting the views. They want you to look up in the air. They don't want you to look down on the ground. That's one of the first indications. But even in the listing agent subtly refers to the steep slope of the property. And of course, that would be correct. Because when you look on the land portal and you expose the contour lines, they default to 20-foot contour lines, meaning that between the contour lines on the screen, that horizontal distance, whenever you go from one line to the next, that represents a 20-foot change in elevation. So just taking a measurement from one line, from between 3 contour lines, from one jumping the next one across to the one on the other end, you're covering 40 feet in elevation. And this measurement's about 100 foot in horizontal distance, which gives you a grade of about 40%. So good luck building a home on that type of slope. In fact, the land portal says that the average slope on this property is 45.11%. And 99% of that land has extreme slope, which is defined as being 15% grade or steeper. And so the average slope is 3 times the minimum threshold for what they would refer to as extreme. When you look at the slope report on Land Portal and you see the southwest corner of the property, kind of where you would be looking into the entrance of the property, when you look back into the property just falls away from you down into the right. And so you really see the on the slope report what that looks like. And the reason that they call 15% grade extreme is because it is. And mainly for land buyers, what that means is that engineering a building foundation becomes very much more expensive, driveway, et cetera. And like, it's just one of those things where you get onto the property and you're just going to know it's not the right one to buy. Because to engineer the type of foundation you would need and to bring in the type of fill material you would need to level out the driveway and just make it more manageable. I mean, you're going to put 50 to 100 grand easy in added cost just to get the land ready for a home. And even then, it's like you could have just gone around the way and bought a property that was way flatter. And so that's kind of the deal there. The like I said, the second S, this stands for slope. You got to know the terrain, identify the approximate slope of the future home location, the likely home location, as well as any areas of a potential driveway. Because if you have to manage slope in any of those places, that's where the cost is really going to come into play. You want to be wary of any building locations or land where you get into more than 15% grade, even more than 10%, even more than like 7 or 8%, honestly. It starts to get a little bit, not only, it's like not necessarily more expensive to build. It's just like it's that the land is harder to use. You want a little slow, maybe like 0.5%, 1%. It helps when the land isn't too flat, because if it's too flat, that can create some drainage issues. But with any slope at all, just a little bit goes a long way. And when you're talking about extreme slope, unless you're in the Hollywood Hills, a lot of places where where the land has really extreme slope, the home values in the area nearby are not going to support the level of added cost that is going to be involved with actually making those pieces of property viable for a home. And for that reason, that's why there's no home there. That's why there's no buyer there. And that's why that land is not going to sell. By the way, I know you guys requested a lot more content on topography and like slope and all this type of stuff. So I hope that this is helpful. HRI Land Group, I see you. I see you out there. Thanks for the comment on that. That was much appreciated. The E in assess stands for environmental. And this is a good, example of a set of properties. I think it's a four building lots we were looking to buy last year. This is on Hazelwood Avenue in Anderson, South Carolina. And when we talk about environmental in the assess system, really the main things that we look for are wetlands and flood zone. The environmental issues that would constrain your ability to use that land the way that you want to. When we look at the land portal, there's no floodplain, which is good. But when you expose the wetlands filter, you see what are referred to as riverine wetlands, basically a creek, likely going to be a creek there. Now, when you have a creek on a piece of property like this, the issue is the positive is like there's a creek. That's nice. It's a nice like kind of water feature. It makes the property charming and distinctive. But what it also does is it imposes a riparian setback. This is going to be typically no less than 50 feet, often up to 100 feet of distance where you cannot impact or build on any land within 50 to 100 feet of any type of regulated waterway. Anything that shows up with a blue line or blue outline on a map is generally going to be regulated. And, no flood zone though. So, but the point is that that creek renders some or all of those building lots either unbuildable or it drastically limits the site plan. But when it comes to environmental, sometimes you're looking for the obvious stuff and you find something that you least expected, which in this case was kudzu. This is an invasive vine that we found on this property. And we found it by looking at old street view photos where it's like, dude, is that kudzu? And this is an invasive vine that's very hard to eradicate, very expensive to eradicate. It takes several years to fully get rid of it. And even in a small area, an acre, a couple acres, like the quote here that we got to eradicate the kudzu on this property was like $4,500. And it would have taken like a few courses of the what is it, herbicide over like a couple of years. And when you have a bigger property, you have a bigger problem. But in this case, the kudzu was just adding insult to injury because you also had like marginal soils, high water table. It's unclear, if you needed a septic, what type of septic you could even put in. And the combination of the limiting setbacks on the creek, the kudzu, the potential that you have an alternative septic system going into these properties, is too much cost, not enough benefit. The third S, the fifth letter in assess is street view. And the street view is very, very, very important. In many ways, when I've talked about like doing due diligence on property before you go out and look at it, a lot of this stuff you can find on your desktop. That's why we're showing you these maps, because it saves you a lot of time. I mean, you're going to walk the property, but you want to know, like, is it even worth getting in the car and taking the trip? Because all this data is really available on your laptop now. A lot of it's low cost or some no cost. And Street View is a free tool where I think it's the single most important data point for due diligence when it comes to land. It's the one thing that if I could have one thing, I would take it above all else. To give you a sense of the ambiance, the location, the entrance of the property, just the qualitative features that really drive the value of that land, everything is summarized in Street View. To give you an example, look at this property on 1178 Broad Avenue in Albany, Georgia. This is a 0.82 acre property, and it looks good from a distance. I mean, the property is a small level, cleared, it's paved road frontage, access to utilities. It looks good for like sort of a industrial commercial property. You could see a lot of potential buyers or commercial developers that want I don't know, like a repair shop or a small manufacturing building or something. And when you actually look on Street View, you get a different impression of the surroundings because the area right around that land is dominated by industrial buildings that are dilapidated, some active, some abandoned, some real tired exterior conditions. And you have a massive like metal, look at that warehouse. You have like a big silo, you got like barbed wire. It's like pretty intense. It's like central casting, like dystopian and industrial America. And you got a scrap yard, scrap heavy. So, I mean, look, can this property be good for some uses? Sure. I'm not like dumping on the property. What I'm doing now, I'm just illustrating the importance of understanding the neighborhood. Because for some people, maybe there's a use there and there's a profitable location for a certain type of business. No judgment, no argument. But guys, these same principles apply to all types of different property. I mean, you get there on the street where you don't even have to leave your house. You can just see the neighborhood and it's going to be eye-opening like it was in this case. The last letter in assess is satellite view. And satellite view has like the ancillary benefit of, when you have a nice neighborhood or a nice property on the ground, sometimes the issues that you're going to run into are less evident until you look on satellite. Like, for example, this 0.2 acre property on Hillside Lane in Whittier, California, listed for $375,000 in what appears to be a really nice neighborhood. I mean, you have $1 million homes, real nice, secluded, tranquil street. And, relative to the value of the finished construction in this area, the land, with maybe a little bit of a discount on the current asking price, it actually might be a decent property. And if you look on the slope, I mean, there's slope here, no argument there. But this is a type of neighborhood where you have the home values to justify a little bit of extra site prep, and you may be able to make a case here. But when you zoom out on satellite view, what you see is that the southeast of this property, you have an unnatural contoured depression in the landscape. You have these little terraces and little dirt roads around this what appears to be some type of quarry. But that is not in fact a quarry per se, it's a landfill. The Savage Canyon landfill. And what has happened, it's like I think it's the biggest and like most significant landfill in this area. There's trucks coming in and out with trash, like literally all the time. That's like what the landfill is there for. Your home is like uncomfortably close. The landfill, it's like, oh, well, it's fine. I read a study where it's not a big deal. Da, da, da. It's like, okay, well, so you're going to buy that land at 375K, get a construction loan for another 700 grand to build a home, knowing that that home is like 2/10 of a mile away from a landfill that not only is going to continue operating, but is also like going to have like planned expansions into the future. I mean, sure, but I would just probably choose another property, and that's my point. Perception is reality. And what happens with these properties around landfills is like down the line, there's always these like news stories of like there's like an incidence of mesothelioma, or there's cancer, or mental illness, okay, anxiety, depression, and it's like we found that in the neighborhood surrounding the landfill that there's a higher incident. It's like there's these anecdotal stories about the landfill's dangerous, it's unhealthy, but you can't quite prove it. You can't quite grasp at it and touch it, but it's there, or you feel it's there. Or even if you feel it's there and it's not there, the expectation starts to generate that type of reality, because then you're stressed, then you have something to worry about, then that changes your physiology, then you have anxiety that you need to manage. The point of all of this is that are you really going to make that investment in a neighborhood right next to a landfill? Probably not. And yet, if you didn't see on satellite, you could run a thorough due diligence. And if you took the right roads into that property, you would never notice the landfill was there. But if you zoom out on satellite, it's the first thing that you're going to see. And that's why you never want to skip that. Just like you don't want to skip it for this property here too. This is a 35-acre piece of land in Greene County, North Carolina. This sold at $60,000. When you zoom out, you see that it's right next to a hog farm. Those big hog barns to the east, and they have that sort of dark purple, that's a manure lagoon. They have to pump all the manure into like an open air lagoon. It's a long story, but hogs generally excrete 8 to 10 times the solid waste pound for pound when compared to humans. And each of those barns can have like hundreds or thousands of hogs one location. So that's not good. Um, and so you want to know, if you have heavy industry, if you have landfills, if you have like quarries, if you have industrial farming operations, you want to know, and you can quickly see that. If not on the ground, you can see it from the sky. And that's why you really want to know about it. So now I'm going to do a live walkthrough. I'm going to see if I can go through this process in ideally 60 seconds or less. I'm going to kind of show you the property here. And we're gonna use the land portal, and then you can use Google Maps, or you can use the land portal mobile app for Street View. But you can use County GIS as well. But the point is, I'm going to show you how to go through this in a timed 6-step process. This is going to be a 13-acre tract of farmland on Calhoun Road in Laurinburg, North Carolina. And you see that it's a property kind of goes on both sides of the road. We're going to get a timer ready, and then I'm going to go through it letter by letter. We'll see how quickly I can do it. So we'll get our timer ready, set, go. So when we look at access, you see that the property has legal and physical access along Calhoun Road. So nice asphalt county road, you're good there. The soil on the larger tract is Naboko loamy sand, which is generally good. You've also got on the smaller tract Autryville sand, good sandy soil. Like, you got good soil here. Slope, like there basically is no slope. So you got a flat piece of land, very easy to get in there and imagine your site plan. No red flags on slope. When we look at environmental, you do have no flood zone, which is good, but you look at no major wetlands, but you have a stream there on the northeast corner, but it's out of the way. It's kind of a nice amenity, not a big deal. Street view, good size acreage, good location. You've got a real nice home next door. You can see this neighborhood's really good. Satellite view, good well-kept neighborhoods around you, close to town, about 5 minutes from your nearby Walmart. So pretty good location there too. Wow, I got 59 seconds. That's not bad. That's better than I did last time. Well, last time I did this. So hopefully you guys see and understand the power of this tool, because, people may be thinking, well, look, the assess system's great, but what about water? What about utilities? What about zoning? We have that in a separate checklist. And we have a video called Final Checklist before buying land. We cover all that, and we're not forgetting about like zoning and like utilities here. But the point is that you don't want to spend a lot of time on that stuff early. You want to understand the physical property first. That's what the assess system is really good at doing, is giving you a lens to find the 6 things that are going to define bad land from the standpoint of the actual physical features, the intrinsic physical characteristics of the property. So you can easily see what is good and what's bad, and make sure you don't focus on the bad stuff, and you can spend all your time pursuing property that's likely to work out for you. Which, when you do that, you're going to want to be able to understand what that land is actually worth, so you make sure you're not overpaying. That is going to be the subject of the next video on our channel. It's called How to Know Land Values with 95% Accuracy, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.